let me ask you this, bro. I watched a few of your interviews. I love them actually because I love, one of my favorite pastimes is to listen to black men that are smarter than me in my free time.
Oh, that's right.
And I pick up game. You know what I'm saying? You spoke about not creating trends, but kind of identifying people that are into like niche trends that you typically wouldn't care about, but you can go find somebody that's like hella into it. And when the time comes, it could feel or seem as if you predicted the trend because you had the foresight to have the right people on the team. How important is it to think outside the box when you're building the right team for the sake of success?
Right. So, you know, there's this thing about diversity, right? Like, you know, most people would hire our agency because, you know, we're 70% minority, 70% female, and we're diverse. And when you go to the procurement team, you could check the box and be like, I got a diverse agency. That's dying out a little bit more, right? The way that I really look at diversity is different. I really look at it as like diversity of thought. Right? Like we got 100, 110 people at the agency. You know, there's this thing about focus groups in our world where you kind of like pressure test shit before you put it into the world, right? And that's like one phase, right? I have the ability to do that internally at the agency before we even have to go to an external focus group because of the type of people that work at the agency. I still sit on every single interview, not the second interview, right? And I'm not really checking to see if like people's cells in Excel are adding up and what their formulas look like. Somebody else is doing that, right? What I'm really checking is to see what they're into. And I expect everyone at the agency to be into something different and then bring that, you know, people are like, bring your whole self to work. Like, nah, that's some real shit, right? That's some real shit at TE because I want you to bring that. And eventually that person's passion will be executed through the work that we do, making our work completely differentiated, and keeping me, connected and young as I can possibly be. You know, still the guy that goes to bed at 9:30. You know, like I'm still trying to be connected, but really seeing what the kids are into for real, right? Like we have we were working on a program. We just did it like last 2 weeks. There's one kid on our strategy team. He was into dead stock magazines and collecting them, right? And he had this platform called, I think it's called Trading Pages, right? When it's where like all his homies, like weird, right? Like collect dead stock magazines and they get around, they read them together, they trade them, they sell them together.
It's a real analog thing.
Right? You know, so everybody's talking about like oh, wax is back and like, you know, like, or, you know, like I saw Sanaa, she was like buying like CDs and playing like Discman, right? Like this whole retro like vibe, like Depop, like all these kind of like, you know, recycled, upcycled, but kind of like rekindled kind of like trends. You know, this homie was like literally like had this kind of like subculture of people who were reading like magazines that we grew up with.
Wow.
And so what we did was we actually created a platform and we hosted an event for him. And then it was like, you know, he was hosting like little gatherings and it was like, nah, let's make this fly. And so I called Frank at the Edition. He gave me the space. I called my tequila client, Los Lobos, and they gave me money for the bar. And then I called the Complex Cats and I was like, yo, I need y'all to amplify this. And so now, you know, we got a case study in something that's new and burgeoning, right? Niche now, major trend later, you know, and now we're just supporting one of the kids that work at the agency, right? And that's just one of 110, right? And so for us, it's very important to have the kids see their work in the world. You know, agency life is really, it's why most agency people drink and be alcoholics, right? It's the reason why I'm sober 5 years, right?
Wow.
Like it's because like, oh, I still smoke trees. So.
Okay.
So
well, I mean, you know,
like,
you're not crazy.
Alcohol, yeah, right. I'm not crazy, right? I'm a daily smoker, but like, you know, it's really amazing for them to see their work in the world. That's what keeps them at the agency, right? Like most of the kids that work for us, their parents don't know what they do. Right? They spend all this money on this education and come back and be like, I want to work in an agency, Mom. I want to move to New York. I don't want to make a lot of money, right? Like what are you talking about? But the day you see your work in the world, it's just so fulfilling, and especially if it's something you're passionate about. So diversity of thought, identifying subcultures and trends, and then connecting that to brands is the sauce. And I think it's something that we do better than anybody. I think there are a lot of the bigger shops that kind of like bootleg it. I've seen a lot of stunt double agencies after us. Never the same, never replicated, you know. But the reality is, it's our job, going back to being an aspirational marketer, right? It's like culture. If you take something off the shelf, put something back of greater equal value, otherwise there ain't gonna be no fish later, right? And so what happens is, like, we live in a world where people overfish, overmine our culture, and there's nobody really putting it back. And so for us, I really utilize brands to be able to do that. Like, even when we did, we have Grand Marnier, when we have Future, and it was, you know, it was like the 10th anniversary of Dirty Sprite, and the brand was basically like, oh, we could just have a performance. And I was like, you know, yeah, he can do that on his own. Well, how about we turn it into a ballet? What?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
The Dirty Sprite ballet.
Right? And then we did it at Brooklyn Academy of Music. And then, you know, next thing you know, like, you know, Misty Copeland is sitting in the front row watching it, right? And so for us, you know, yeah, Future performed, yeah, it was a ballet. But what was interesting was that it was probably 80% of the people who were there, it was their first time seeing a ballet. That's where loyalty is won, right? Like, not at the cash register, not at the bar. It's basically when you can teach a consumer something, they can use what you teach them as cultural currency, and they can use that cultural currency to actually, you know, better themselves, right? Like, yeah, I'm buying more of that, right?
Yeah.
Like, before I even taste it, right? And so that's what my job is to do.
Wow.
Yeah, I use that term cultural currency a lot because a lot of my career and my legacy is built on that. It's hard for me to sometimes move in some of these spaces, and because you come from this culture, so you have put me in positions over time. We've done business together where you see what it is I do and see how it could connect to a certain audience.
Yeah.
But for an artist like me, I don't have, like, it's not obvious, I think, to the mainstream person what my value as a brand. And I say that very cautiously because I very rarely refer to myself as a brand. Like, I almost never. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, I would.
I leave that for other people. I put in position.
That for me. Right.
Other people. But as far as me as an artist, it's not my job to do that.
Right.
I might, if I work with someone like you, I work with somebody, and that's their job to take the Talib Kweli brand and figure out where to place it. But cultural currency is so important in these days because we come from the era where, like, you had, like, you mentioned focus groups, and the focus group was a real thing. I remember that people took seriously, and people looked at that as gospel. And I've heard you speak on why focus groups are archaic, why they don't make sense, because the consumer today, you can't market to them in that way. They're too smart.
All right. Right.
Could you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's all a quin, bro. Like, it's all a quin, right? Like, you know, brands make billions of dollars, millions of dollars, and they base, you know, what they put in the world, you know, or the final, you know, DEFCON 2 of that work getting in the world is a focus group of people who want to get paid $125 for a day to tell you if they like this work or not. So you got to really look at it like, you know, you got to look at it like, why is a room full of people, let's say the overhead is $1,500 for 10 people, and that's the you know, the bridge between you getting the work out in the world or not? Like, no, like, what you really want are people like us talking to you about your brand, but we know the value of us to do it. And so we've actually created a platform at TE. Jared actually created it.
Shout out to Jared, man.
Yeah, 100%.
How's he doing?
He's doing really great, you know what I mean? Dad, married, you know, doing the thing, you know.
Yeah.
But, you know, Jared runs my strategy team. Jared is, other than my dad, he's the smartest human I've ever met. And
he used to party a lot too.
Yeah. Jared was outside, you know what I mean? He still is kind of outside a little bit, him and wifey, but they go to those like membership like clubs. Like they be doing like zero bond.
Membership has its privileges.
Yeah, they do zero bond and they do that kind of shit. You know what I'm saying? But Jared's kind of like fake outside. You know what I'm saying? You know, but he'll still.
He's not outside.
Nah, he'll hit you. He still hits you with like a double vodka on the rocks. Though, you know what I'm saying? So he's, you know, he's still giving that to you. But you know, the biggest challenge was just kind of like, you know, where are brands getting their information from, right? Like, and you know, you're asking, you know, people who want to take a small fee to tell you about the world, and it's like, it doesn't make sense. And so what we were really finding was that we would come up with the proper insights for brands, but we never had the data to support the insights. So it's very difficult selling in a big position change or challenge to a brand without the data. And so Jared created this thing called Context, where it's kind of like a study and a kind of like a report, a trend report that he works on with a company called Harris Poll. Nielsen Harris Poll. He only got 2 of them. And Harris Poll is run by this dude named John Gersma, who's brilliant. And it allows us to kind of talk to influentials to kind of get their trend information and get their stuff, and then utilize that data to support our insights that we have. And people always ask, well, how do you get influential people to participate? Well, if you really look at folk and look at people in general, they got the same challenge that we have. All entrepreneurs have the same challenge that we have, which is proving a vision and a story. And so really understanding data and making data help tell that kind of creative story is the next frontier of it. And Jared is right on it right now. And so for us, it's really important that people who respect the culture have a say-so in molding the work that's for the consumer. And 10 times out of 10, at these bigger agencies, they're not there, right? Like these people who have jobs, not careers. These are people that, it's like, I don't want to call too many agencies out, but it's like, you walk in and you can tell it's definitely square, and then they'll have like a little table of like cool kids wearing like Bape and, all that kind of shit. And then they'll be like, oh, this is our cool guy team, right? And the reality is like, they don't impact the work because they're sitting over there. Like what you really need is someone who, cares about the culture, creating the insights, and then demanding that the work meets that criteria. And that's the reason why the stuff is kind of like blah, right? Like from a design perspective, it's kind of like, and I don't want to be like the old 50-year-old curmudgeon, but I'm not excited about what these young kids are spitting out.
Yeah, that's pretty curmudgeonly.
It is, but I mean, but I want to actively be a part in what they do.
But you're
right?
active, like
yeah. I'm an active curmudgeon.
Which side are you on? Get off the fence, son. Which side are you on? Get off the fence, son. Which side